Whenever I see a scary thread, it ends up being about ghosts and whatnot. That's not scary. I find real people more strange and eerie than the paranormal. What are your scariest encounters with real people? When I was 18, I worked the evening shift at a convenience store. Over the previous 3 nights, 3 stores from the same chain had been held up at gunpoint in my small city. So my manager had basically been prepping me all week to get robbed. I was, understandably, on edge all night. I was down to the last few hours of my shift and I was finally starting to calm down a little bit when a guy with his hat pulled down low walked in. Came right up to the counter and started reaching into the inside of his jacket and said, "You know those days when you should have just stayed home? I think this is one of them." Time was moving in slow motion at this point and my heart was beating out of my chest. After what felt like 10 minutes, the guy pulled his wallet out of his jacket and asked for a pack of cigarettes. Anticlimactic, but scary nonetheless. PL. My sister's bedroom was on the 2nd floor. All of a sudden she screamed and said she saw a hand on her window. We thought she was having a nightmare. Told her to go back to bed. Next morning we found a ladder up against her house by her window. Edit. Haha. I see people are freaked. It was the 2nd floor. It was normal house. I don't know if that helps or hurts. But the top of the ladder reached it. Also, it happened in 1987. So you can relax a little. I work in a Middle Eastern grocery store in one of the reddest states. When my son was an infant, I would take him with me to work most days. We get a lot of soldiers that have spent time overseas looking for some of the good food they had there. One day this soldier comes in and he's just nice as can be. Then he sees my son and he starts talking to him in a cutie baby voice saying how cute he is. Then out of nowhere, and in the same cutie voice, he says to my son, "Oh, you're so cute. I just wanna gouge your little eyes out." It caught me way off guard. I just laughed nervously and picked my son up and walked in the back. I can dig it. Sometimes my cat is just so cute I want to punch her right in her stupid, cute f-king face. And I tell her so. When I was a youngling, my brother and I went for a walk in the woods behind our new house. We came upon an unfamiliar area and noticed plaster body parts thrown willy-nilly. We kept walking and discovered a mannequin massacre. Dozens of lifelike plaster mannequins in various positions of death and torture. Some with burn marks. Some tied to trees with forks and knives stuck into them. And others hung by their necks from branches 3 stories up. The mannequins were dressed in human clothes and featured detailed facial expressions of pain and terror. In the middle of this WTF cluster FCK were childlike mannequins that had been tied up and blindfolded. Used condoms were everywhere. We left, terrified and wondering who the FCK would do this. Full stop. The time my high school sweetheart's father found out I took his daughter's virginity. He took me for a drive to an empty field to have a chat. He's a good father and she is an only child. I thought I was dead. My older brother and I were playing in a cemetery in a small Texas town. The cemetery sat next to some railroad tracks which led into the black section of town. For those not in the know, tons of small southern towns are still de facto segregated. It's a huge cemetery and there was no one around. Then we heard little pops. Pop, pop, pop. And pieces of the headstones began flying off around us. We looked toward the railroad tracks and there was an old black man shooting at us with a rifle. When I was younger and we had just moved to this town, the lady who lived down the block attempted to break into our house. She banged on the windows and couldn't get in though. Fast forward 6 years. There she is outside of our new house on the other side of town, asking us for gas money with our gas can. This is what restraining orders are made for. Several years ago I had to spend the night in a psych ward. I couldn't sleep because of this woman that was banging her head against the wall while screaming. Something real and scary. Huh. There is a skeleton inside you right now. My first semester at Rutgers, New Brunswick, NJ. I got stuck taking all night classes and didn't get out until about 10:00. I then would walk from the College Ave campus to the NJ Transit station. Not too far a walk, but it starts to feel seedy in that area and I wasn't 100% sure where I was going. So here I am already a little leery when all of a sudden I hear someone barking at me. That's right, barking. I look up and discover a man is up in the tree barking and growling down at me as I walk by. I was freaked out but afraid if I ran it might provoke him to follow, so I speed walked to the corner, then ran across the street and didn't stop till I was at the train platform. My cousin and I went out drinking in Ohio. I was drunk. So I step outside for some fresh air from the crowded bar. There was this guy outside who was kind of lanky and having a smoke. Feeling disoriented, I sat on the bench to rest my head a bit and the guy came up to me saying, "Guy, dude, you ain't ever gonna make it in the real world. If I had my way, I'd take you back home with me to my tool shed where I'd tie you to the wall and torture you to death." Well, that sounds lovely. Hold on. I'm really interested in that. But I've got to take a piss real quick. I went back into the bar. Went into the men's restroom and locked the door until my head cleared up so I could tell my cousin that we should leave. I have to. When I was around 12, a neighbor had a party where I met a girl my age. My mom was happy to see me making friends, so we head to my house to play games. My dog was a sweet lab who had never been angry or growled ever. This girl walks up to him to pet him, and he immediately growls and barks, and eventually cowers close to me. I couldn't believe it. But even by 12 I believed you don't just ignore a dog's intuition. So I take note of the sign, but we go play and then go for a walk. Not 10 minutes into the conversation and this girl is an obvious sociopath. I realized what I and the dog had felt about her. She was empty and fake. In very visceral way. She starts talking about rape. Not in a maybe she was abused way. Doesn't that sound interesting? But how do the logistics work kind of way. She specifically wondered how you pay someone while holding a knife to their neck. Her parents invited me to spend the night at her house. I declined. Let's not meet. Let's not meet? Copy pasta from my own thread similar to this. My friend is a female named Mystery, not Ellie, and Mystery gets her first car last year. Mystery takes it on her first drive alone to McDonald's. Afterwards, Mystery drives a few hours to her best friend's house, who moved away months ago upstate. Halfway through the drive, someone taps her shoulder from the back of the car and asks her if her name is Mystery. She slams on the brakes and gets out of the car. And like 3 cars stop with her. And the guy gets out and jumps off the like 4-foot bridge they were on and is not seen again. It is our opinion that he got in when she went to McDonald's. But he could have gotten in when her parents put it in the garage. TL. DR guy hops a ride in the mystery machine. I remember when I was younger I was playing hide and seek with my cousins at my grandparents' house. I went into my grandparents' room and hid under the bed. My grandfather had just gotten out of the shower, walked into the room ass naked, and bent down in front of the bed without knowing I was in there. Mentally scarred for life. And he will never know. Sitting in a McDonald's in New York, eating a cheeseburger. Big, fat black man comes up and gives me a wet willy. He then giggles and runs away. I was walking to the parkade on campus late at night after studying from finals. As I am walking to the pedestrian overpass to the parkade, I notice a girl, maybe 17-19, walking alone in her bare feet. It strikes me as odd. But I keep walking until she sits on a curb and puts her head in her lap. So I walk over to her and say, "Excuse me. Is everything alright?" Full stop. As soon as I speak, she gets straight up and starts walking towards me, but looking past me with a glazed look. By this time I don't know what to do, so I just stand there while she walks directly by me, almost touching shoulders with me, all the while looking directly ahead. Then she walked all the way down the road out of sight. It was the weirdest thing I have ever seen. While not real life, I find frightening or disturbing realistic scenarios in movies to be far more unnerving than fantastical but impossible ones. Edit. Added realistic to my sentence. I agree. The psychologically thrilling scenarios are always more likely to get under my skin. I was on a Greyhound bus from Sacramento to San Fran. There was a dude across the aisle with a hammer. No luggage. Just a hammer. He had this look in his eyes. 2. Probably the oh god everyone thinks I'm a weirdo because I lost my toolbox but luckily found my hammer and am carrying it on the bus because FCK losing it face. Today I was standing outside the dentist's office waiting for my wife. Smoking a cig. When this old guy walked up to me, looked me dead in the eyes and asked me how much wood could a woodchuck chuck. And it took me a second to see he was Ben serious, so all I said was it chuck as much as it feels like, and he turned around and walked away. Token, not me but someone I know. Bear with me. My mother used to work in real estate when she was younger. Once, she was asked to go out alone to a creepy and strange house in the middle of the country with a seeking buyer, an equally creepy and strange man. My mom kept getting a bad feeling from this guy, and he seemed nervous and kept jumping around. Eventually he asked her to go down and see the cavernous and finished basement with her. Very calmly, she responds, "Oh, no. I'll just wait up here while you check it out." The more she thought about that afterwards, the creepier it got. And when she told her boss about it, he said that under no circumstances were you supposed to go out to a house like that alone with any customer. She thinks that maybe he wanted to hurt someone and didn't really know how. Edit. This is the reason why I don't take Greyhound buses across country to visit my parents anymore. I got my seat on the bus and was about to fall asleep when a guy dressed in torn up jeans and a see-through mesh shirt sat next to me. I really didn't care at the time, just thought he had horrible fashion sense. The bus made it onto the highway and the guy suddenly starts to shake as if he was coming off drugs. He was probably just cold, but it still aided to freaking me out at the time. Then he starts to mumble something about never again. Don't trust him again. And I'll get her. Let's just say I didn't get any sleep on that bus ride. 2 weeks later I watched the news and saw the same guy. He had, without any type of warning, decapitated the passengers sitting next to him. One day I was welcomed into a group to conduct an experience with scent relations. On the first day we all got to smell freshly baked cookies and had to write down what the smell reminded us of. Grandma's house or Christmas. The next few days went with this, including cookies, ham and bacon. The next day we were blindfolded as usual and led into the room, and we all were told to write what we think. I thought I was in a new home. It smelled wonderful. They then told me to remove my blindfold and I saw I was in a disgusting, dank, dirty apartment. I was stuck in there with no response for what seemed like an eternity. I once shook hands with Rick Santorum.